American riflemen are the best riflemen in the world.
Yeah.
Because the training they get is the best in the world. Position exercises. Here's an exercise that'll loosen up the shoulder joint. When you've done it enough, you'll be able to hold the rifle up with your right hand alone. The main job of the left hand is to steady the rifle, not to support it. Nearly every recruit gets a brilliant idea of how to overcome this unsteadiness. He pulls his left arm back against his ribs, balances the rifle delicately on his thumb and two fingers, and blazes away. But that doesn't work, does it, Sergeant Higgins? No, sir. There's only one right way to hold the rifle in the standing position, and the sergeant is showing it to you right now.
This is the point, Tom, where we throw it to Roy,
Thank you,
and he
Sergeant
tells
Higgins.
a story about being with Carbine Williams when he was designing the gun. Well, howdy, y'all. I'm trying to include the Tom McHale colloquialisms. I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, Tom McHale, the editor of American Handgunner, and Roy Huntington, our special projects editor, and we are the Gun Cranks. So, Tom, did I say it right? Howdy, y'all.
Well, I might not bad, but I might have gone with hi,
Okay.
all y'all, because all y'all is
All
really.
y'all.
I actually, it's
All
funny.
y'all.
I do say that all the time, and I'm not even particularly Southern.
Yeah.
Lived here for a long time, but
Well, and let me
I
add.
wasn't born here. I was born in communist California, as a matter of fact.
Go figure. Well, and also let me add in, how's your mom and them? I've spent enough time in the South, I know. Well, guys, it's great. We're back. It's the Gun Cranks, and how's everybody doing? And I think this is the last week of July or something like that. So,
Yeah, it's raining here, thank goodness. So I got my kayak ready, though. Yeah.
well, cool. Well, before we get started, we've got to talk about our great sponsor of the Gun Cranks, and that would be 4 Patriots. And we were talking before we got started about the 4 Patriots Sidekick solar generator. And Roy came up with this idea with the solar panel. It's like the inverse of the old sun reflector. So does that take the color out of your face, the suntan off of you, Roy?
It sucks the
Prevents skin
suntan
cancer.
off your face. It does. And because through some miracle that they invented, it creates solar energy so you could recharge the battery of the machine. But it depends on just how badly you're suntanned or not.
If you hold it like that, is it recharging your brain?
Yeah, and it does that too. That's what the sides are for. When you go like that, then that.
But Roy, what if
what
it's raining?
Then it's easy, because then if it's raining. So see, it's really a useful accessory, and people don't really realize how versatile it is. So
I'm sure 4 Patriots is thrilled to death that they have hired the Gun Cranks to promote their product. But it really is a great product. And we were talking about we were just talking about
Roy, the special product editor, has been retired forcibly.
Yeah. No, Tom was talking about he was just on a road trip and he forgot to bring his because otherwise he would have had laptop access in the car. So the solar generator, the Sidekick solar generator, for some reason I can't ever remember that name. Sidekick solar generator from 4 Patriots. That's the number 4, the word patriots.com. And Tom, they've got a special offer for the loyal audience of the Gun Cranks.
Yeah. There's a secret promo code that'll get you a 10% discount on your first order. Don't keep it. Let's all keep it between us, but it's Gun Cranks. All one word.
There you go.
Don't tell anyone.
10% off your first order at 4 Patriots, the number 4, the word patriots.com. Check them out. In spite of us being their spokespeople, they are a good company. So 4patriots.com. Well, gentlemen, it's time for the topic du jour. And I'd come up with this one because I just spent some time with the president of Inland Manufacturing, and they make fine quality replica M1 carbines. And we got to talking about carbines. And, it's one of the most popular guns in terms of numbers. They made a boatload of them in World War II. And those things stayed in service in various hands with military and police. Well, they're still in service. I don't know if any military is still carrying them, but probably somewhere off the beaten path, there's still some units carrying them. But the M1 carbine, everybody poo-poos it today. It's old and it's underpowered and it's blah, 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 blah. I'm telling you, it was my first patrol carbine because it's what I could afford as a young police officer. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case today. So that tells you right there, the M1 carbine is still a thing. Or do you disagree?
This pains me to say this, but I absolutely agree with you. Okay, seriously? Everybody always talks about what's your number one favorite gun. If you had to, if Roy started beating us with that solar panel and said, "What is it? What's your number one favorite?" Right? I might be picking the M1 carbine.
Really?
It's the most fun just favorite. I'm not saying most useful for fill in the blank or whatever. It is just so much fun. It's such a beautifully handling little carbine. It's just so darn elegant and fun. So, it's way up there for me.
This is the point, Tom, where we throw it to Roy, and he tells a story about being with Carbine Williams when he was designing the gun or something. So, Roy, your thoughts on the M1 carbine?
Well, first you have to say it right. It's
Carbine.
Carbine. See, it's me and Carbine William. If you haven't seen that Jimmy Stewart movie, then hang up and go to YouTube and see if you could find it. Carbine Williams is pretty cool. I was going to mirror what you said, though, Brent, is that this would have been 1975 or so. I was a reserve officer in Chula Vista, California, and the National City Cops, who were the small city next to us, had 30 carbines mounted in their car on the cage, right behind. And I have to tell you, because we were adjacent, and so we would cover them sometimes, and they would cover us sometimes. And it was pretty darn nice to see a couple of National City Cops show up and pop those carbines out. If we were having a bank alarm or something. And of course, we used to say, how come we can't have those? And that fell on deaf ears, of course. At that same time, I used to buy carbines for $150. I mean, for $200, you would get like a, Winchester beautiful, Arsenal refinished. The only real ammo in those days was military surplus ball. And something to remember, which people may not know this, is that there is not any corrosive 30 carbine ammo. All of the 30 carbine ammo made was non-corrosive. So even in the late period of World War II, where they really went after it. So if you can still score some surplus 30 carbine ammo, don't be afraid of it,
Yep.
And in the, really early 90s, 91, 92, 93, there was a bit of a resurgence in carbine interest with police agencies. And there was a couple of companies who were finding them and restoring them, and some police agencies who were buying them. But they just still had the full 110 grain full metal jacket ammunition. And so I worked with a friend of mine and with Federal, and we got them under the auspices of gold. They made their gold dot as a law enforcement round. And initially they thought, they just said, you're stupid. No one would ever buy it. Those are antique guns and stuff. And so we actually went and demonstrated the guns. It's typical, right? The leaders there, they're not really shooters, so they don't know anything. And when they actually fired the guns and they saw what it was, they went, wow, this is really cool. How come we're not in this market? And it's like, how come you're not in this market? That's why we're here talking to you. So anyway, so they made the gold dot police. I think it says like 4LE or something like that on the boxes. And I'll tell you what, performs like son of a gun.
It does.
Makes a
gel tested that stuff
Magnum.
and shot it through all sorts of things and then into a gel block, and it works beautifully.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think with modern ammunition, the only downside to the M1 carbine now is the fact that the cost has appreciated, even for a real beater. I've told the story before. I think I bought my first one $200 or thereabouts, and I sold it for $250. And I know the guy who owns it, and I've made him multiple offers, and he has scoffed to this point. And gosh, that was, of all the guns I've owned, that's one of the top of the list of why did I sell it? Well, I know why I sold it, because I was a young, broke cop, and it was, like groceries or car payment or something. But man, I wish I had that gun back. But
Offer him $350.
I did at one point, and he laughed and laughed and laughed. But
Well,
I'll tell you,
they're $1,000 now. A beater carbine. Just jump on Gunbroker, and I've got a postal meter carbine. It's a real pretty one.
Me too.
And I mean, they look you right in the eye and say $1,500, $1,800, and magazines. I saw somebody, J&G Sales or somebody like that, was advertising original World War II era 30 carbine, 30 round magazines, not too rusty and are probably still good, right? $60 a piece. We used to buy those for $1.
Yeah.
Yep. I had a gun case in my patrol car, which I think I've told the story before, but the first thing I did was buy one of those plastic, I think it was a chote side folding stock, because I wanted to be tactical. And then I had, I think, 10 magazines. And of course the guys are like, you gonna overthrow Canada, or what are you doing with all that? I'm like, you never know. Got to have a carbine, right? But I think when I sold the gun, he immediately took that stock off, because I still had the wood stock, and I'm just, it hurts my heart to sit here and think about giving that gun away. But $1,000, $1,500 now, it's crazy.
Well, there's a lot of people say, oh, they're old, they're worn, they're all that kind of stuff. Well, if you buy one, unless it's been restored, just get a spring kit and replace the springs on it. And virtually everything else on the gun is fine. And and they run like a top. And a good carbine with good ammunition will shoot, 5 inches at 100 yards. And they shoot better than that, because I've scoped them. But with the iron sights, that's about what you can get. Well, geez, I mean, that's what most people shoot with an AR anymore. If you pick up an AR with iron sights and do better than that, you're a pretty darn good shooter.
Yep.
The thing with the carbine, though, that to me, it's probably its number one attribute. It is so easy to shoot well. Even with iron sights, it is so easy to hit 100-yard reasonable target.
And women love to shoot them. Have you ever noticed that? You hand a woman a 30 carbine and say, here, shoot this. They go bang, 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 bang. And they go, oh, this is fun. Bang, 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 bang.
Try that again.
They just like it because it's small and it's tidy and it fits them.
Yep. And I got to say, if you get into the history of it, and we've actually run a couple of articles recently, and we've got a couple more planned in coming editions of Guns Magazine, but the history of the carbine is so fascinating. I mean, not necessarily how it came about. They needed a light weapon in World War II that they could produce quickly. So that's kind of remarkable. But to me, the interesting part is after they made millions of these in World War II, then they ended up all over the place. And then the M1A1, which was the folding stock paratrooper model. And then you came out with the M2, which was the fully automatic version. And most folks realized that an M1 converted into an M2 was easy with 2 or 3 parts. So not saying you should do that, because that's a violation of federal felony, but it's really easy to do. And
unless you're Hunter Biden, then it's fine.
Unless you're Hunter Biden, then that's fine and dandy. Sorry, Joe. But if you read the convoluted history of where all these guns went, because a lot of them were already with England, and they went all over the place, and then we shipped a whole bunch, every conceivable country that was a friend of ours, and all sorts of things happened. Some of the guns that were in World War II that stayed here periodically went through the refurb cycle and are pretty much top flight guns, whereas some that went overseas, especially into the Asian countries, and you'd see the pictures of guys in 1950 with little berets and their little carbines fighting some bush war. But that's the ones that they say you really got to be careful about, because the maintenance level with some of these professional military organizations was quite loose, shall we say. And then, of course, clear up into Vietnam, the South Vietnamese had a whole bunch of carbines, and I believe we just started getting some of those back. So carbine condition is all over the wall, all over the table, so to speak. And I don't know. I just always found it fascinating, all the different countries that were armed with these silly little rifles.
You know, I would say don't be afraid to get any carbine. So if your neighbor dies and his wife tries to sell you his beater carbine, you give her the $500 for it because you can get any part you need anymore. And there's a lot of people who know how to work on them. And you said something about the M2 carbine, and you're right. A lot of people don't know this, is that an M2 carbine, the full auto one, there's nothing different on the receiver or anything. It's just about 4 other parts that kind of bolt onto it, and that turns it into the full auto. And those are the things that are the machine guns.
Right.
Can I tell a short story? My partner and I were working radar one time in San Diego, and we were out on this part in a ritzy part of town, and there was this old guy who comes toddling down with some iced teas, and he says, "Oh, I appreciate you officers being out here slowing these sons of bitches down," and that kind of stuff. And so we're just talking a little bit, and my friend was a real World War II military kind of a guy. Whenever he saw an old guy like this, at this time, World War II veterans were everywhere still, and so he said, "Hey, are you a vet?" And the guy said, "Oh yeah, I'm a vet. I was in the European theater. We did this and that." And sure enough, he's in combat. And he said, "Well, what was your favorite gun?" He said, "Oh, my favorite gun was an M2 carbine." And he said, "Really?" And then he said, "You want to see it?" So we went, yeah. We could lock up the car, put away the radars and everything, and walk up to his house with him. And son of a gun, he opens up his closet and he has this mint condition M2 carbine.
Wow.
And 2 or 3 other carbines, and bandoliers, ammunition, and all kinds of Mauser, K98 Mauser, all wartime bringback stuff, right?
Yeah.
A Luger, a P38, and all that. And so we just had a great time. And my friend, he said, you're technically not allowed to have this. And the old guy said, "Well, what do you mean? I mean, it was mine. I fought a war with it. What do you mean I can't have it?"
Hard to argue with that.
It's hard to argue with that. Yeah. And so
That's
we said,
funny.
"Well, just, you have a good time, sir. Thanks for showing that with us."
Don't offer to show it to other people.
No, and we told him all that stuff. And and I've told this story before, and people say, "Well, yeah, you should have turned him in." It's like, well, you're an idiot. Come here. I have to shoot you in the head. Are you kidding?
Oh,
He's a threat to society, right?
I know.
Yeah.
It is just amazing.
Wow.
We had an M2 carbine at the lab of full auto. We used to take it out to the desert. We would go to the impound room, and we would find all of any 30 carbine that had been impounded in the last year. So it was always a pretty eclectic group of ammunition, as you might imagine. And we would take it out to the desert and then shoot this M2 carbine. And I'm with you, Tom. It's the funnest damn gun in the world, because you can almost write your name with it. In full auto. It was just like droop, 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 droop.
Tom, I wouldn't know. Do you?
No, mine's quite semi-auto, so I can write my name slowly.
Yes. Oh, you know what? And that's something we should do someday, because a reader just said that. He said, "Why don't you guys shoot one of them Indian targets where they used to shoot with a 22 and do an Indian, picture on a target? Y'all ought to do that." And so I accepted that as a personal challenge. So,
wow, I'd completely forgotten about that. It was in the back of all the comic books.
I know, yeah. And so I say I'm going to go online right now and say, if you want to use your 30 carbine, that's fine too. But we should all do one, and no cheating, no like Brent, no 2 feet away, to stitch up a thing. But say they used to shoot them really close, like 3 or 4 yards away. I've seen the old Ad Topperwein and those guys. Yeah. And we should all do one, and then we can bring it on and have fun and make fun of each other and stuff like that. So
can I do mine all in one shot with a 12 gauge?
Yeah, you could connect the lines. Is that,
Wow.
I think it'd be kind of fun.
Oh, so how many carbines you got there, Roy?
No, I just have one.
Ah,
I sold them all. Well, because when you pay $250 for a carbine and keep it 25 years, and you can sell it for $1,000, it goes back to what I said on the last show, which is sell your guns while you're still alive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. Well, somewhere out there, my former carbine is sitting in a gun rack, pining for me in its original wood stock. And
Dad,
oh well.
Dad.
Exactly. You sold your child. So
I would say
I don't know. I don't have any.
I was going to say the nearest thing to that though nowadays is that new Homesteader carbine.
Yeah.
I mean, Ruger makes a PC9. Yeah, I got it. But, it's polymer and I don't know, it's like modern. But I just tested that new Homesteader and all the time I had it, I kept thinking M1 carbine, M1 carbine, M1 carbine, because that's what it feels like. That's what it shoots like. That's what it acts like. And so if you got the hankering, there's a way to do that with a little bit more affordable 9mm ammunition. So don't forget that option.
Very cool. Hey, and one model we didn't talk about was the snooper scope equipped M1 carbine. You guys remember those? I've only seen them once or twice, but it's the infrared, one of the first infrared or night vision equipped weapons anywhere in the world. And it was a big light that fit underneath, and it was infrared, and there was a very rudimentary infrared scope, and it was only good to about 100 yards, but apparently they were used quite successfully in the South Pacific. So
don't
I
forget
suppose
the
Roy,
best part of that though, the 600-pound battery pack that you wear on this. See, those guys could have used a 4 Patriots power pack right there. That thing's light. Probably has more juice in it too.
I'll tell you what, if 4 Patriots will buy a snooper scope and an M1 carbine, I will volunteer to do a video on it. Fair? I think so.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're right, though, because the shooter had a battery pack they used to wear on his back. And it would last like 30 minutes.
It was like 8 car batteries, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Well, and the lamp looked like a car headlight, and old school car headlights got pretty warm. So you're wearing a acid container on your back, and you've got this hot, light in the front. It didn't sound like it would have been a real fun weapon, but apparently the guys that carried it, it was pretty effective at night. So crazy.
I talked to an old guy from World War II in the Pacific who was a flamethrower operator, right?
Wow.
And he said,
he's still alive.
I know. He said, you just should have painted crosshairs right on my chest. He said, because as soon as they see you come out with a flamethrower tank, you are the target.
Wow. You know what? Yeah. That's going to be one of our next gun cranks. I know next to nothing about flamethrowers, but we got to talk about it.
Wait, Will Dabbs knows because I had him do an article one time with a real flamethrower.
Of course you did.
Of course he did. Yeah.
Okay.
Has one.
Then we'll invite Will. We'll do a four person setup, and we'll have Will walk us through the flamethrower, because I'm sure that'll be something to remember. So,
doesn't Elon Musk have a company that makes flamethrowers?
He does.
Seriously,
yeah.
So we need to get one of those and talk that over with.
That's
Dabs
a thought.
And compare.
Well, if we're going to wind up now,
the
sun's coming up outside, so I need to go outside and get my
flamethrower going.
I do that. So,
well, I think we can all agree. End of the day, M1 carbine, 2 thumbs up, right? 2 thumbs up. So, if you've got one, cherish it, love it, protect it. Never sell it to anybody for $250. So,
nope, shoot it too.
There you go, and shoot it. Take it out and shoot it. So, Tom, talk about the Gun Cranks audio podcast. We talked a little bit about it last episode, but it's growing by leaps and bounds. It's a thing. It's a thing now.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's Gun Cranks you can take in your car or out mowing the lawn or riding a bike. without staring at a computer screen. So any of the major podcast networks, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, take your pick and get it however you like. Just search for Gun Cranks Podcast.
And same thing for the Guns Magazine podcast, My Little Vehicle. You can watch it here on YouTube, or you can check it out in all the podcast directories. So finally, of course, gunsmagazine.com and americanhandgunner.com. And we'd like you to check those out when you're done. So anything else, guys, before we go?
Get a carbine, Brent.
Carbine. Carbine. Yeah, carbine.
All righty. Well, make sure you check us out next week. We'll have something interesting, maybe flamethrowers or more flaming pigeons. Who knows? But until then, we are the Gun Cranks, and we will see you next time.
I'm Guns Magazine editor Brett Wheat, along with Tom Field, editor of American Handgunner, Eric Yellowhouse, the editor of AmericanTalk.com, and Dad About, Man About Town, Roy Huntington.